What Friends Are For. This is a story about three very different women who are friends living in a typical Devon village. When a man's dead body is discovered at the Barton, which is the big house on the outskirts of the village, it transpires that they have more in common than they thought. Secrets are revealed and skeletons come rattling out of cupboards. Frances, elegant, well off, and a very bitter divorcee. A relative newcomer to the village, Frances is on a mission to find a suitable man to accompany her to her son's society wedding, to prove to her ex-husband, who dumped her for a younger model, that she still does have what it takes, actually. Jenny, recently widowed and trying to deal with the prospect of being made redundant in the midst of trying to deal with crippling debt. Also a recent incomer to the village, she hides her problems well, up to a point. Helen has lived in the village all her life. She's never married. She feels very ordinary and even a little dowdy compared to the sophisticated Frances and the professional Jenny. But to all intents and purposes, she has no problems. And yet, as the story unravels, hers is seen to be perhaps the most shocking story of them all. Here's the prologue. Brandy, Alex, large one, quick! Wendy Parsons burst into the bar of the Cavalier, which was unusually busy for a Tuesday lunchtime, and hence made her unorthodox entry even more notable. Granted, it was the day for the budget Italian lunch, but there was also a group of 4 walkers on an out-of-season holiday. A couple of the old farmers had dropped by on their ritual pub crawl from the market, and Frances, Jenny and Helen had called in for a spot of lunch. This was unusual, as unless Jenny was on holiday, she was normally at work weekdays, though sometimes she was able to work from home. Maybe this was one of those days. All things considered, things were buzzing along quite nicely for a midweek lunchtime in a small village pub. The fire was roaring merrily away and giving out a welcome heat. Then Wendy Parsons, the local estate agent, had pitched up in a lather and brought the place to a stunned silence, apart from the logs crackling in the fire. "It's medicinal," said Wendy, as if an explanation was necessary, but she was aware that her rather unorthodox entry had attracted the attention of the entire pub. Alex Harris, landlord of some 20 years standing at the Cavalier, had seen most things in his time, and Wendy had the reputation of being a dreadful gossip and something of a drama queen to boot. In fairness, she'd probably bowled into the Cavalier rather than the Travellers' Rest down the road, thinking that it would have been the quieter of the two pubs, and therefore have attracted less attention. There again, she would have underestimated the impact of his budget European lunches on his trade, and anyway, in the state she seemed to be in, she probably didn't give any of that any thought, just bowled into the first pub she came to, according to which direction she come from. He poured a large brandy and put it on the bar in front of her. She took a swift slug and rummaged in her bag for her purse. "Best put another in there, Alex," she said, and at that Alex really did wonder what had occurred to get her in such a state. Wendy was a white wine spritzer kind of girl, not the sort to knock back large brandies, medicinal or otherwise. He put another large measure in her glass and took the £20 note she tossed onto the bar. He waited to hear what had prompted this uncharacteristic action on her part, as indeed did everyone in the bar. Wendy took another significant slug of her drink, followed by a deep breath. "It's a body," she said, "up at the Barton. A man. I was showing that lovely Ben Fisher round again. He really is serious about buying the place, which would be wonderful." She paused. The assembled company was far less interested in learning that there was a serious buyer for the Barton than in getting the gory details of the mysterious body. "We've gone round a couple of times before, and he was just picking up on a couple of queries, really, when there was this banging, and we couldn't work out where it was coming from." She paused for another fortifying gulp of brandy. Alex still hadn't sorted out her money. Where was this going? "We followed the noise, and there was a big old shed tucked around the side, surrounded by what we'd just assumed was a thick shrubbery. We hadn't even realised there was a shed there." "Bit lacking on the survey, then," said Frances to Jenny. Helen was heading to the bar to get another bottle of wine when Wendy had burst in. Jenny shrugged and raised her eyebrows. Everything in the countryside seemed to be a bit lacking compared to what Frances had been used to in city life. She pushed her empty plate to one side, preoccupied with her own problems. OK, so finding a body wasn't exactly the everyday story of estate agents, but she really couldn't have cared less about it right at that moment. The whole purpose of the lunch had been to cheer her up. Bodies at the Barton didn't figure in their plans, or so she thought at the time. Helen turned to Wendy, very pale. Was there anything in this shed? She asked. It seemed a strange question to ask, and Jenny and Frances exchanged surprised looks, although Helen did seem to have a particular interest in the Barton, and had been quite agitated since the news that it had come onto the market had been announced. As it happens, said Wendy, taking a further drink from her glass, there was. The noise that attracted us was a window that had obviously been opened to gain access. The man, the body, was actually sitting in an old car which must have been there for years under a thick tarpaulin. Really, murmured Helen, as she collapsed in a crumpled heap on the floor. So I hope that's whetted your appetite. What friends are for.